Welcome to Son of a Glitch. Join us as we explore some of the internet's craziest glitch stories. A woman claims she went to sleep in 1984 and woke up in 2024. She wanders a familiar house made strange, stumbles into a world of tattoos and glowing rectangles, and insists she isn't mad, even when doctors can't find a single lie in her story. She builds a plan to go back, is institutionalized for her own safety, and tells her tale to the one person who still listens. I went to sleep in 1984 with my hair set in rags, and the radiator clanking like a chain being dragged down the stairwell. There was a to-do list by the bread box, buy potatoes, mend Ari's sweater, queue early for oranges if the lorry comes. The last thing I remember clearly is the drape of our gray blanket, and the taste of peppermint tea from a chipped mug that said Berlin on the side in black letters, as if the mug itself were shouting to be heard over history. I woke to silence, so complete it roared. The radiator had been skinned and replaced by something smooth and white, humming like a trapped fly. The light was wrong, blue lean and cold, and everyone had ironed the future flat and shined it. Our wallpaper was gone. The floorboards were the same. The crack under the bedroom window the same. I put my hand there and felt the draft I had known since '78. I was in my house, but I was not in my time. Downstairs, the kitchen was a museum of practical magic. A rectangle on the counter woke when I touched it, showing a photograph of me that I had never taken and a clock that said 7:19, but not the way clocks should say anything. A box on the wall blinked red like a watchful eye. In the living room, a black window hung where the bookcase had been and reflected me like a pond. When I waved, a stranger with my mouth waved back. Outside, a man with hair the color of lollipops leaned on a machine shaped like a beetle and made of glass. He had metal in his face. His eyebrows were slices. I asked him in my best school English, "Are you an alien?" He laughed, then saw my face and stopped. "Lady, you okay?" he said. "What year is this?" I asked. 2024, he said, drawing each word out as if he were carrying it across a river. You hit your head?" I told him I went to sleep in 1984. He asked me about the spelling of the Berenstain Bears, a name I did not know, and about a man named Mandela whom I knew was very much alive. "He is president," I said. "He is not dead." The lollipop-haired man looked at me, as if he were looking down from a great height. He put a moving picture program on the black window inside and showed me clips, timelines, voices talking about timelines. He called it TikTok, which felt like being mocked by a clock. I found bread in the cupboard in a bag that sealed itself with a hiss. I found milk in a box that made clouds when you opened it. I found in a drawer the deed to the house with names I recognized as cousins, their addresses overlaid with numbers like coordinates to a treasure I could not decode. Our house had stayed in the family. The family had outrun me by 40 years. At night, the birdsong of this age, distant sirens, the wind caught in satellite dishes, sang me to sleep and would not let me fall. I kept thinking, if you hold your breath and step just so, you can cross from one ice floe to another. I had stepped wrong. Somewhere behind me on the black water, I had left my husband brushing his teeth, and my son with his paper soldier. I heard the soldier's foot tap the table twice, my signal for see you soon. The obsession came slow, like frost climbing a window. I read about experimental physics, watched lectures until my eyes watered. I learned new words that felt like peppermint shards in the mouth: decoherence, qubit, Everett. I sketched a device on squared paper, coils a ring, a chair in the middle like a barber's throne. I went to a research center with my blueprints and my trembling hope. I told them I needed copper, a power source, a room without echoes. I told them I needed to go back to my husband's unkissed cheek. The guards were kind. Kindness can be a lever. They took my papers and called a doctor. The doctor was kind too. She asked if I was hearing voices, only the future. If I had a history, everyone does. She suggested I stay somewhere restful. The place they took me smelled like lemon and lint. Doors buzzed. Shoes squeaked. The windows had handles that did not work. They tested me and I passed. Not in the way that sets you free, in the way that makes you interesting. I could name the shopkeepers from my block who had died in '83. My answers matched city records. I knew old prices, old slogans, old phone numbers that were no longer numbers. When they asked me who the general secretary was, I gave the old answer and felt their gaze tilt like a tray slipping. When they asked for today's prime minister, I kept my mouth shut. 40 years of history is an ocean. You cannot carry it without spilling. A nurse with heavy lashes brought me tea. No peppermint, but something with berries that tasted like television static. She spoke to me softly, in German with edges smoothed by travel. Mein Oma was from the east, she said. She told me about the cues. She called me Frau H, instead of the number on my bracelet. She brought me a radio the size of a soap bar that fetched songs from the air without wires. One afternoon it played a melody I knew from a boy in our stairwell who wrote songs no one had heard yet. I whispered his name, and the nurse wrote it down as if it mattered. At night I dream in the old calendar. Walking home with toilet paper like a wedding streamer around my neck. The smell of coal on a cold day. The way my husband would tap the soldier twice. In the morning I tell the nurse how to work the device if I cannot. If the ring hums like a hive, I say, you must turn it down by a hair. If it sings the wrong key, you will go to someone else's kitchen. Where would you go? She asks. To the pause, I say. To the space between seconds. There's a room there. It has no wallpaper. They tell me my story is impossible. I tell them the same thing. We smile in the space where we do not agree. I sit by the window and watch a plane draw a chalk line across the sky, and I think, if the world can stitch itself together so neatly, it can stitch me back to where I belong. I hold my breath. I count to 2. Somewhere a soldier taps twice on a table. Somewhere a woman in my kitchen takes a mug down and finds it is not where she left it. When the lights in the ward cut out for a heartbeat, just one, barely a blink, the radio coughs and catches a half bar of a song that should not exist yet. My skin pebbles. The nurse looks up. In that thimble of dark, I feel the house adjust around me, as if the future had shifted its weight from one foot to the other. If I go back, it will feel like nothing. A blink. A draft under the window. A laugh caught in a child's throat and released. If I do not, I will teach the nurse the old songs until they sound like home. I will learn the names of the new birds. I will sit in the lemon-lint evenings, and when the radio stumbles, I will put my hand to the air where the seam is. I will wait for the pause between seconds, and when it comes, I will step. Story 2. A lucid dreamer slips into awareness during sleep and gets confronted by people who insist I shouldn't be conscious there. They show me files of my dreams, call me by a case number, and prepare an injection to switch off my ability to wake inside dreams. A handler spares me. I wake burning with fever, and I haven't lucid dreamed since. I always know when the scene is lying. The piano keys ripple like water. The bedroom window opens onto streets that never existed behind my parents' house. I say the sentence that snaps the world to attention. I'm dreaming. The moment I say it, the air goes rigid, like cling film stretched tight. The piano stops its melting act. A woman with a clipboard blinks into the doorway. Pixie cut, efficient smile. You shouldn't be here, she says, as if I've wandered into an operating theater. The walls peel back to a wireframe grid, white lines on infinite black. A room unstitches, becomes a corridor, becomes a deck, metal underfoot, the low thrum of engines. I think spacecraft and the thought fits. Screens hum to life. One shows me, my childhood kitchen, the snow outside, the exact moment I became lucid that winter I turned 13. Another shows the nightmare with the stairwell that never ends. Each time the camera angle is wrong. Not my eyes, but eyes watching me. Your case K317, the clipboard woman says, easing into kindness. Humans aren't supposed to breach the layers. We log anomalies. You're unusual. Uniformed figures arrive, crisp, not military I recognize, but authoritative enough. They talk about disabling features, about a gene panel, about giving me a small correction. I hear correction and taste metal. They place dots along the soft veins of my arm. This will prevent lucid access, one says. Safer for everyone. He's already looking past me to his checklist. Please, I say. The word is small and human in a place that feels like software. The clipboard woman meets my eyes. Something trembles in her professional mask. Fandom, pity, rebellion, I can't tell. In the waiting room beyond, dreamers sit like statues, mouths parted, eyes tunneled. Handlers hover behind each one, caretakers or jailers. I try to wake the way I always do, fall backward, float up, grab at the thread of my body. The thread slips. They hand the woman a syringe. Administer and return her. She leads me to a quiet alcove, palms the plunger, and, while the others aren't looking, tips the dose into her sleeve. I've followed you for years, she whispers, almost giddy, like a fan meeting a singer. You see beyond the scrim. Go now. Go soft. Don't move. Let gravity do it. I go limp. I fall through sound. I wake on fire. The fever is a sun pinned behind my eyes. 104. then 103, then 102 for days of wet sheets and shaking. I dream ordinary dreams that taste like cardboard. Alarm clocks, emails, grocery lists. When the fever breaks, I reach for the old door. I'm dreaming, and nothing answers. The grid is gone. The night after, I try again. I turn the window in my parents' house into a carnival, the stairwell into a spiral. Everything behaves. Reality feels sealed, lacquered. I haven't lucid dreamed since. I sleep in muted rooms, like a museum where all the exhibits are covered. Sometimes, when I'm almost under, I hear a corridor hum and a woman's voice, guilty and proud. K317, you're clear. Then the sound fades, like a ship throttling down, and the world holds. Story 3. A couple checks their infant's monitor and sees a man standing over the crib. They rush in, no one's there. The footage replays on the monitor's history feed, but their app insists no data was recorded at that time. That night, the baby laughs at something unseen, reaching into the air. The next morning, their doorbell camera captures a figure identical to the father, standing outside in silence, staring at the baby's window. Stockholm holds sound like breath in winter. The light goes thin, the radiators whisper, and every footstep feels padded by snow we haven't even tracked inside yet. That night I was watching the monitor from the sofa, blue night vision, a grainy spill of crib slats and knitted foxes, when a darker shape bled out of the corner. Too tall for me or Johan, wrong in the way a shadow is wrong when it chooses its own direction. No movement on the floorboards, no click of the door. Just presence. "C'est du?" I whispered. "Do you see?" Johan stood so fast the mug rattled on the table. "Artifact," he said, "compression, jitter, all those words he trusts because they sound like bolts you can tighten." We ran anyway. In the nursery the air had the cooled metal taste of a church. Our son looked up at us, raised one hand, and sighed, as if relieved we'd made it in time to witness something we'd already missed. Back on the app the history showed a clean hole where the shape had been. 211 to 214 no events. Still, if I dragged the little white, that just so, the screen would unfurl the dark smear, a head bent, a palm hovering over the rail as if testing warmth. I watched it 3 times, then put the phone face down like it might look back. That's when the baby started laughing, not at us, past us. He tracked the empty air with the solemn intensity of a devout person receiving communion. I felt the old superstition rise, the one my Mormor slipped under every practical sentence. Don't be afraid where children are not afraid. Fear teaches spirits your name. It's the radiator, Johan said, eyes on a forum thread about IR LEDs and reflections. Pareidolia. Morning made a liar of him and the forums. The doorbell camera pinged at 7:03. I opened the feed and saw Johan outside in his winter coat, hair still damp from the shower he was in when I called for him. Hands folded too neatly, chest not rising, eyes fixed to the nursery window. He didn't blink. He didn't ring. He only raised his palm, slow, deliberate, and the audio caught the faintest squeal from inside, like glass under a fingertip. By the time we opened the door, the courtyard was only snow and the fossilized ellipses of 6 steps that began and ended nowhere. Nagon Skojar, Johan said, someone's joking, but his voice had lost its hinge. We kept the lamps on all day as if light were a contract. Agneta from 3B knocked to return a baking dish, and saw the baby reach for nothing. She made a small, guilty cross near her heart. Det finns Mylingar, she said, soft as steam. There are Mylinks, unrest, unraised, who come in borrowed faces to ask for warmth. We claimed him, Johan said, too quickly, and the room remembered the name we lit candles for last year and never got to use. That night we tested reality, the way you test a rope bridge. Johan set a second camera, a laptop low to the rug, aimed at the crib. We'll triangulate, he said, grateful for an angle that could be measured. I tucked a shallow dish of salt under the bed because my grandmother would have, because Agneta said to, because hands need something to do while the heart waits. I hummed whatever melody my mouth found. The baby fell asleep, holding that hum like a warm stone. At 2:00 for the picture on both cameras blew out and came back. He was there. Not quite Johan, but exactly his height, exactly his winter coat, wet with the snow that did not exist inside our walls. The movement was wrong in the way slow internet is wrong, just a fraction behind the world. On the laptop his hand touched the rail a heartbeat before it did on my phone. 2 realities playing catch-up. Don't, I said before I meant to. My voice sounded like it had been trying to learn a song and kept missing the note. Don't take heat. Johan stepped into the doorway and stopped. Can or do, he asked. Do you feel that? The temperature had dropped in a careful line at ankle height, as if something small had drawn itself up to the crib and stood there, patient as a cue. Our son breathed heavier once, then softer. The air held a lullaby I couldn't hear, but recognized in the body the way you recognize the weight of your own name. In my head the church bell tolled back to the day we lit that candle. I understood then what face the courtyard double had borrowed, and why it had looked toward the window instead of the door. I spoke the way my Mormor would speak to a stray cat she wanted to come in, but only as far as the mat. Weiser dig, I told the corner. We see you. Du Freiser. You are cold. Du far varm har, men du mast vara försiktig. You can warm yourself here, but you must be careful. Du behover int bara hans ansikti. You don't have to wear his face. Nothing moved. Everything eased. The cameras recorded brightness around the crib like frost filmed in reverse. The baby made a contented sound I don't think he'd learned yet. On the laptop, a single frame corrupted into a palm against the lens, tiny, all lines in need, gone before we could decide whether we'd seen it. After that, the feeds behaved like good machines. The history logged events that didn't crash the app. The doorbell saw only snow. We left the salt where it was. I kept the lamp on low. Some afternoons, between the drifts of steam on the nursery window, there's a small oval smear at exactly adult forehead height, and, if I tilt my head, at child height too. On those days I sing while I change diapers, nonsense syllables that feel borrowed from before phones and cameras, and the kind of clocks that can lie to you. The baby sometimes laughs at the air and closes his fist around nothing, then sleeps that way, protective, as if holding the shape of a hand he knows he cannot keep. Johann still says artifact when he needs to believe in bolts. I let him. I prefer seams. Every night I touch the place on the wall where the cold line used to be, and ask, "Er du varm nu?" Are you warm now? The apartment answers with the softest click from the radiator, as if someone very small is tapping twice to say yes. Story 4. A 12-year-old girl hears her mother calling from the hallway late at night. After several calls, she finally creeps out, only to find her mother fast asleep. As she stares, her mother's voice calls her name again, this time from the same dark room. She races back, trips into her bed, and something strikes her face. Her bedsheet has been knotted to the upper bars of her bunk bed, strung tight like a hammock. Her parents rush in and can't untie the impossible knots. They finally admit the mimic that haunts their home isn't so friendly, after all. We always said the house breathed like a person. In winter the wind came in off the bog and found the stone. It made the walls sigh and the stairs pop like knuckles. Mam called it character, De called it the old place settling, and my sister Aoife said it was the ghost. We had one, everyone agreed. A friendly one. Harmless as a parrot, De laughed, only ever throwing our voices about the place for mischief. We'd be in the kitchen, 3 of us together, and Mam's voice would float up from the hall. "Girls, coats on, you'll be late," though Mam stood stirring the pot beside us. Sometimes it tried my voice, high and soft from the back step, "Mammy," when I was at the table doing sums. We learned to say, "Very good now," and ignore it like the cows bawling in the next field. That night, the wind had a blade in it. I lay on the bottom bunk with the white metal bars just overhead, the ones Aoife liked to drum her fingers on when she was thinking. The house was quiet, no telly, no radio, only the faint tick of the clock and the slow hush of the fire going to embers. I was awake. You know the way your eyes feel when they've been staring a hole through the dark for ages? Like that. Then, Mare. Mam's voice from the hall, soft but urgent. I propped on my elbows. "Ma'am." "Nothing." The quiet pressed down again. I settled back, pulled the sheet to my chin. "Mare." Closer this time, the way Mam sounds when she's at the door and doesn't want to wake Aoife. "Yeah." I whispered, half cross, half relieved, waiting for the door to ease open and the warm slice of landing light. Third time, the same voice, same syllables, just the smallest breath between them. "Mare." It was the sameness that frightened me. Mam's voice is never the same twice. She sings and scolds and laughs along the notes. This one had the shape of her voice, but no temperature. I slid out of bed anyway, feet to cold boards, the latch shadows making a ladder up the hall. Our bedroom door stood open. Across the landing, Mam and Da's door was ajar. I held the frame and leaned in with one eye. The moon had left a square on their carpet. Mam lay turned to the wall, hair a black question mark on the pillow. Da was snoring, small and steady. They were gone deep. "Mare," Mam's voice said again, but it came from where Mam slept. I stood there, a breath pinched in my throat, and watched the back of her head while her own voice called me from it, as if the sound had slipped loose and was wearing her like a shawl. I ran. The hall stretched longer than I remembered, and the shadows slid like oil under my toes. I saw the bright square of our room and flung myself at it, up onto the mattress, pulling the sheet high. Something hit my face, a limp slap, and I yelped. I snapped the lamp on. My sheet was gone from me, and up above, all four corners knotted hard to the white bars overhead, pulled so tight the middle hung low like a hammock. The knots were small as walnuts, the fabric twisted and bitten into itself, the way the fishermen do down at the quay when they mean a knot for weather. I lay there with my heart bucking, the blanket kicked to my knees, and stared at that impossible slack belly of sheet swinging gently like it had just been tied and padded. I screamed then. Not loud, the kind of scream that sticks in your throat and rattles your teeth. Aoife flung down from the top bunk with a curse and bounced to the floor. She looked up and went white. Mam came first, hair loose, nightdress half-tucked, and Da's feet smacked the hall behind her. "What in God's?" Mam started, but the rest didn't come. "I didn't," I said, uselessly, though none of them had asked. Da reached up and set his fingers to one knot. He grunted. "Jesus, that's tight." He tried another, and another, then fetched the poker from the fireplace and worked at the fabric, careful not to rip it. Aoife stood with her arms around her belly, like she was holding in the cold, or maybe like the sight of it might spill out. Mam didn't say, "It's only the ghost," not this time. She put her hand on my hair, and I felt the tremble run from her palm through me. "Who called you?" she asked, not looking away from the knots. "You did," I said. "From the hall. And from your bed." Mam's face pinched in a way that wasn't anger. "That's enough," she told the room, crisp as when she catches the dog with a sock. "You've had your fun." The sheet wouldn't come free. Da let out his breath in a white sigh and said, very quiet, "A stronger man than me tied those." He fetched the shears and looked to Mam. She didn't nod and she didn't shake her head. She kept her hand on my hair and stared at the white of the bars, the little walnut knots, the way the fabric had taken the twist like it wanted it. To cut carefully, thread by thread, until the sheet sighed down in my lap like a surrender. We didn't sleep after. Mam salted the thresholds like her mother had taught her, for luck, for sense, for whatever listens. She tucked a sprig of rowan over the bedroom door. Though he'd have sworn against it by daylight, stuck a holy picture under the mattress corner. Aoife crawled back up and lay on her belly peering down at me, chin over the edge like a cat on a wall. "If it's a mimic," she whispered, "maybe it needs a voice to wear." "I don't want it to wear mine," I whispered back. "Then don't answer," she said. "Not unless it's warm." We didn't say the word friendly anymore. We said the house and it, and Mam started to sing under her breath in the evenings, the old songs that braid the air into safer shapes. For a while, the voices stopped. Then, one afternoon when Mam was at the shop and was mending the fence, I heard my own voice call from the back step, bright as a bell. "Mammy?" It was perfect down to the wobble on the last note. I sat very still and let the fear pass through me like weather. I didn't answer. Somewhere outside the window, the wind turned, and a little tap, two quick raps like a knuckle on porcelain, came from the white bars above my head. I looked up at the place where the knots had been. You could see the ghosts of them, faint spirals pressed into the paint. I reached up and tapped back twice, as softly as I could. The house breathed. It wasn't friendship, and it wasn't war. It was a kind of agreement you make with something older than you are. I won't name you if you won't wear my name. We lived with that, and with the rowan, and with the salt that never seemed to melt no matter how damp the nights got. And when the voices came, sometimes from the hall, sometimes from the room where Mam slept, I kept my mouth shut against my own name and listened for warmth. Story 5. A bookstore job. A woman finishes her shift at 1:58 p.m. She hugs a co-worker, helps a customer, walks the length of the store, yet the clock never moves. Every device, even the register, reads 1:58. She stares until minutes later, it jumps to 1:59. But when she checks security footage later, it shows her standing still mid-aisle for several seconds, frozen, while everyone else moves normally. Time didn't stop for the world, only for her. At 13:58 the store felt like it always does before the afternoon train lets people spill in. Paper breathing, aircon humming, distant escalator chime like a polite bell. I was shelving staff picks in the literature aisle. S into T. Murakami nudging Tanizaki, my fingers blackened a little with the dust that never quite leaves new books alone. "Ah, Satoko-chan, I'm heading out," said Yuki from magazines, peeking around the end cap. She smelled like hand cream and ink, and we did the quick bow hug we always do when we're both behind schedule. Have a good break. Thanks, you too, I said, and checked my watch, 1:58. Perfect. 2 minutes to finish the shelf, log out, maybe even grab a canned coffee from the machine if the line was merciful. A customer stopped me on my way to the till. Suma Mason, where do you keep the children's folk tales? His Japanese had the careful crispness of practice. I smiled and led him all the way past cooking, past travel, through the narrow that seems to squeeze even the light into obedience, to kids. 12 paces turn 12 paces. I keyed the search at the kiosk out of habit. The little green numbers at the top right said 1358. I laughed, a soft nose breath at myself. I hadn't been gone 2 minutes. Of course it still was 1:58. But when I walked back to the front, that number was everywhere like a stubborn thought. On the register screen where you sign credit slips, on the wall clock I never trust, on my phone when I palmed it face up under the counter. 1358, 1358, 1358. The escalator chimed again. A man coughed in the poetry aisle. Somewhere in the building a child shouted "Mama," and made the word climb the entire pitch of his small body. Is the clock broken? I asked Aki at the register. She looked up. No. She tapped the corner of the screen like that might startle it into honesty. It's 1358, she said, and smiled with her eyes the way we do for customers. See? All is well. I walked the length of the store. The hum under the flooring felt like it does when you stand too long next to a vending machine. The quiet burr that tells you electricity is doing work you don't get to see. I greeted a woman comparing notebooks by touching the corners to decide which one had better paper. I lifted a book that had fallen onto its spine and tucked it back onto the table with its siblings. Every small thing clicked in place. Every small thing told me, yes, you are moving. Back by the till, I checked my phone again. The colon between the numbers blinked in a steady rhythm that I suddenly resented. Blink, blink, blink. Each blink refusing me the favor of 1 minute. Suma Mason, a man said, and I turned to ring up his purchase. The register chirped at me as if it, too, were on schedule. I handed over the bag and bowed. The escalator chimed again. Satoko? Aki's voice was thin now. You okay? Yes. I'm a Tokyo girl. I know how to keep my face in line even when my pulse is knocking on bone. 1 moment. I breathed in and out like I do when the trains are late and the platform is a school of fish that forgot how to turn. I stared at the wall clock. To stare at something is to control it, right? Logic of children, but I took it. When it moved, when that minute hand finally tugged itself the width of a hair to 1:59, it felt like a tooth sliding into place after a long ache. I laughed again too loud. Aki laughed too, because laughter can be folded around anything, like a napkin around a stain. There. See, she said. Late lunch. And then, because it was her way to make any oddness small enough to pocket, lucky. Time waited for you. But when I clocked out and found our floor manager, she went pale in a tidy, composed way, like a curtain being drawn. We got a call from security, she said. There was "Did you stop?" She made a shape in the air with her hands like someone smoothing a wrinkled sheet. We went downstairs to the office where the monitors bloom wall to wall, the store reduced to gray rectangles, and the white blur of people not standing still. Here, the guard said, and tapped back through the feed. Literature, 1358. The camera showed my aisle, Murakami into Tanizaki, the back of my head, my bun slightly crooked because I had redone it at the elevator. I was standing in the middle of the aisle like a mannequin. People flowed around me. A boy slowed to look at me, as if I were a street performer pretending to be bronze. Yuki's hug had not happened yet. The customer looking for folk tales had not yet approached. I had not yet moved. I was a cutout in the stream. How long? I asked. He rolled back and forth in the office chair. The freeze is 7 seconds. Your watch, though. He pointed. In the frame my left wrist was visible. The face read 1358. When he scrubbed forward, the numbers stayed 1358. In another angle, another camera, the till's clock was 1358 too. 7 seconds of me as statue and the clock's unbothered, like cats politely considering whether the new human is edible. When it ends cleanly. In the video I tilt my head, slip a book into a shelf. The feed catches up, as if it had been buffering reality, and finally found enough signal. I told myself it was nothing. Heat. Blood sugar. The held breath of an afternoon. but I started noticing little places where time had link caught in it. A train countdown stuck on 1 minute, then leaping straight to now boarding. A crosswalk that stalled on red just long enough to make me feel like a child again, hand in my mother's, told to wait, always wait. My phone's stopwatch app ticked without moving the minute. I reset it. It behaved. Of course it behaved. Only human things misbehave. Machines just do things humans haven't thought of yet. That night I lay in bed texting Yuki. She sent me a string of crying laughing emojis and a link about microsleeps, as if a nap could pull the whole store into agreement. I put my phone face down and watched the ceiling. I tried the old trick, name 5 sounds. Aircon. Someone's TV above. A bicycle bell in the street, clear as a bead. The campus clock tolling too. My heart. I must have slept, because I woke at darkness and looked at the digital clock across the room. 2:03. I closed my eyes, breathed, opened them. 2:03. The colon blinked. Blink. Blink. I lay very still, like prey. Somewhere in the building a pipe pinged, expanding its metal like a polite applause. The colon blinked and blinked. When it finally turned to 2:04, I laughed into the pillow, a little broken. You win, I told the air. Or I do. Sometimes that's the same thing. Story 6. 2 teenage girls take a disposable camera to a haunted bridge and flee after hearing voices and a distant scream. When the film is developed, the ghostly bridge shots terrify them. They throw the prints away. Hours later, the same photos reappear in their stack, then start doubling, singles, doubles, sevens. The pictures feel thicker in their hands, like paper growing. Only the haunted shots multiply. We went because Cheo dared me. No más 5 photos, she said, just 5, and she shook the little yellow disposable, so the rattle inside would sound braver than we were. The bridge is old steel over the train cut, 2 towns out from ours. People say in the 70s some kids jumped there on a moonless night, drunk or dared or heartbroken. People always change the reason, but never the ending. We waited until dusk, so my mama wouldn't ask where we were going. The air smelled like dust and diesel, and the eucalyptus leaves rubbed together like hands. From the road the bridge looks ordinary, but when you step onto it, the air gets colder in a way you feel in your teeth. Uno, Cheo said, and I lifted the camera. The flash popped and painted everything a flat, stupid white. When my eyes cleared, I saw the rails shiver with heat that didn't match the cold. Dose. Another flash. In the corner of my eye, a little cloud of something, not breath, not dust, too low for fog, dragged itself across the far beam. You hear that? I asked. Hear what? She said, but we both did, voices, not words, like a radio caught between stations. We kept going because that's what you do at 16. You walk forward because the alternative is walking back and saying you were afraid. Trace. Flash. The camera whirred the way disposables do, grinding the future into place. The noise under the bridge changed. It wasn't wind, it was like the cut itself had lungs. Quattro. Flash. The voices pulled closer, still wordless, slipping along the metal. My hands felt sticky. The guardrail was slick like fingers had been there before. Cinco, I said, and the flash went off, and somewhere down in the cut a scream rose like it was being pulled on a string. It didn't sound right, too clean like a sound effect, but it still found me under the ribs. Cheo grabbed my sleeve. We ran. The camera banged against my thigh, plastic and ridiculous. A month later, I'd stuffed the camera in a drawer and then forgotten it. We took it to the Farmacia on the corner with the mini-lab. The clerk with the black nail polish slid the envelope across the counter with bored fingers. Singles, she said, circle stamped on the front. Back at my house, we spread the photos on my bed. First, the regular life, my cousin's quince cake, the dog trying to eat a sparkler, my little brother making faces at himself in a spoon. And then at the end, the bridge. They were wrong from the first one. The flash had hit the steel and stuck there, like light can be glue. In the second, there was a smear along the beam, not dust, not a lens flare. You can tell those when you've had enough cheap cameras. In the third, a knot of fog hung low over the tracks, a shape like a girl hunched against the rails. In the fourth, something at the exact center of the frame looked like breath held too long. And the fifth, if you looked straight at it, it was nothing but overexposure. If you looked sideways, like at a star, you saw a face where faces should never be. No, I said, and Cheo said, nope, and we scooped the bridge shots and fed them into the bathroom trash under the sink. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. We'll take them to the lot, she said. Burn 'em. We didn't. We left them in the dark like you leave a problem for morning. An hour later, we were at the table showing my cousin the other photos. I flipped through to the end. The bridge pictures were back. Not just back, there were 2 of each now, stuck together like they'd been licked. I peeled them apart. The paper felt thicker, damp, not with water, but with handling that hadn't happened. No manches, Cheo said, and we both laughed because if you don't laugh the other thing is screaming. Maybe the clerk printed doubles, I said. We walked back to the farmacia in the hot blue of 5 p.m. The same girl glanced at our envelope, then at the machine. Singles, she repeated without looking bored this time. It says singles. She opened a panel and showed us the setting like proof of innocence. Sometimes paper sticks, she offered, but she was watching our faces too closely, as if we were a show. At home we did the only thing that made sense to girls who grew up with abuelas who put salt at thresholds and covered mirrors for thunder. We laid every photo out on the floor in rows. Regular life on the left, bad life on the right. I sat cross-legged in front of the bridge column, and I could feel the air cooler on my shins there, ridiculous as that sounds. Let's count, I said. We stacked the family pictures. They behaved, 1 of each, the world folding itself politely. Then the bridge. I placed the first number 1, then its twin, then 2 more. 4. I blinked. 6. Cheo, I whispered because the stack was growing in my hands. 7, my number, the one on my football jersey, sat there like an answer I had not asked for. Stop, she said, small. But I kept going because I had to see where it would end. It didn't. It only paused, the way a breath pauses before you blow out a candle. Okay, I said to the room. We see you. My voice sounded like my mother's when she talks to strays. Yeah, sufficient. Enough. We took the extras outside. The evening train passed under the bridge a few miles away, and our clothes felt like it. We burned 1 photo in the grill. The flame crawled slow, fighting for the ink, like the picture wanted to stay. It blackened and curled. The smoke smelled like old tape. Back inside, the remaining stack felt heavier. Not more pictures. Just heavier. We slid them into a shoebox and taped it shut, 3 wraps each way like a gift you don't want opened. I wrote, Navidad lights, on the top to lie to the future. We stuck it under my bed, because under is where the truth lives. We never went back to the bridge at night. We didn't need to. The photos had brought the place home. Sometimes I think about opening the box and finding the stack smaller, the way bread goes missing in houses with mice. Sometimes I dream I open it, and there's only 1 photo left, blank white, and my thumbprint floats there like a moon. On hot afternoons when the house is still and the curtains breathe, I take the stack out in my head and count to 7. I picture the girl shape in the fog looking up, patient as a cue. I don't know what she wants. Warmth, maybe. Witness. A number to hang her weight on. Te vio, I say under my breath when the train goes by. I see you. The paper in the shoebox doesn't answer, but sometimes the floor cools my palms like it's saying thank you, like it's saying stay.